So in our fourth video, we want to practice using these special names. The name based on the degree, along with the name that is based on the number of terms. So at the top of this page, you should see these three examples that we did in the last video. These ones are telling you, or what the questions are asking you, what is the degree? So because this first polynomial has a degree of 2, looking at the table, it is called a quadratic. That is the name based on the degree. Then we can also name it based on the number of terms. This polynomial has 2 terms. That means, looking at the table, you know it is a binomial. So this polynomial can be specifically called a quadratic binomial. That is what it is. This is the name based on the degree, and then binomial is based on the number of terms. The next example, this degree is 1. So looking at your table, you know that the name based on the degree would be linear. And then because there is only 1 term, this is not a binomial, it's not a trinomial, because there's not 2 or 3 terms. It is just a monomial, because mono means 1. So this polynomial right here, 4x, it is a linear monomial. In the final example, down at the bottom, we said that the degree was 3. The largest exponent is 3, so that's your degree. And looking at your table, that means the name based on the degree is cubic. And since we also have 3 separate terms, we call this a trinomial. So this polynomial right here, 4x to the 3rd power minus x squared plus x, is a cubic trinomial. So what I want you to do is go back to the beginning of these practice problems all the way to this one here. For these 3 polynomials, the question was, what is the coefficient of the second term? What I want you to do is name every single one of these. Name based on the degree and number of terms. So go ahead and pause the video and do this for not just the problems in this page, but the next page and the next and the next, all of these examples. We want you to do this. Name based on the degree and the number of terms. All right, so pause the video and do those problems on your own, and then resume when you have them answered, and I'll go through the answers for you. So by now you should have written 2 words for every single one of these, right? 2 different words for all of these. The name based on the degree for the first is quadratic. And since there are 2 terms, the name for the number of terms is a binomial. The next example, the degree is 3, so this is a cubic. And since there are 3 terms, it is a trinomial. The next example is the same. It is a degree of 3 with 3 terms. This one is also a cubic trinomial. Next page, the next set of problems. The first example has a degree of 1. So this is a linear. And since there's 2 terms, it's a linear binomial. This example does not have a variable. It's x to the 0 power. This is a constant. So it is a constant. And it is a monomial because there is only 1 term. Then down here, since the exponent is 2, the largest exponent is 2, we call this quadratic. And since there are 1, 2, 3 terms, it is a quadratic trinomial. Next set of problems. We have the largest exponent of 4. We don't have any special name, so you're just going to say it's a 4th degree. And since we have 1, 2, 3 terms, it's a 4th degree trinomial. The next example's largest exponent is 2, so we call it a quadratic. And since we have 1, 2 terms, it is a binomial, quadratic binomial. Last, the largest exponent is 3, so we call it a cubic. And since there's 1, 2 terms, it is a cubic binomial. Next page. We have the largest exponent of 4 again. So this is a 4th degree. And since we have 1, 2, 3 terms, it's a 4th degree trinomial. The next example has the largest exponent of 1, since there is a variable there. So this is linear. And since we have 2 separate terms, it's a linear binomial. Final example on this set, we have an exponent of 2. That's your largest exponent, so it is a quadratic. And there are 1, 2, 3 separate terms, so it is a quadratic trinomial. Next page. We have a largest exponent of 2, so this is a quadratic. And then since there are 1, 2, 3 terms, it is a quadratic trinomial. The next example's largest exponent is 2. So this is also quadratic, but there is only 1 term here. 1 term means it's a quadratic monomial. And then the last one, again, it's another quadratic, so its degree is 2 once more, but we have 2 terms, 3x squared and 1. So it's a quadratic binomial. Next set of questions. We've got a largest exponent of 1, so this is linear. And since there are 2 terms, it's a linear binomial. The next example has a largest exponent of 2, so it is a quadratic. And since there are 1, 2, 3 separate terms, it is a quadratic trinomial. Down here at the bottom, we've got a largest exponent of 1, which means it is linear. And we have 2 separate terms, so it's a linear binomial. Next section. We have the largest exponent of 3, which means this is a cubic, and 3 separate terms, which means it's a cubic trinomial. The next example has the largest exponent of 2, which means it is a quadratic. And since there are 2 terms, it is a binomial. The last example's largest exponent is 2, so this is also a quadratic. But since there is just a single term, x squared, it's a quadratic monomial. Monomial. Next, we have largest exponent of 3, which means this is cubic. And since we have 2 terms, it is a binomial. This next largest exponent is 1, which means it's linear. Also 2 terms, so it's also a binomial. Last example, there is no variable, so it's x to the 0 power. This is a constant, and since there's just 1 term, it is a constant monomial. All right, these ones, oh, these are the ones we just did. Right? So that's all of your problems. Good luck on the test.